existing in some turbulent times, but they are ones that are certainly giving rise to people finding their own voice and speaking truth to power. And as we age, hopefully, as we come into our own power, we are discovering certain truths about ourselves that, if we allow them to, will help propel us into next chapters. So, here's a truth of mine that I have never really said out loud before. I don't really know what I look like. Now, it's not that I've never looked in a mirror before. I have, plenty. I wasn't raised in some crazy cult where vanity is some egregious sin and we weren't allowed to. That's not the problem. Nor is there anything wrong with my eyesight. Miraculously, I'm still rocking 20/20. Yeah, woo! We'll see how that goes in 10 more years. The problem is that there is a massive difference between what I see in the mirror and what I am told the rest of the world sees. In fact, this disconnect is so profound that it was once so unsettling for me to see photographs of myself, because what I saw on film and then later in digital was so dramatically different from what I saw in the mirror. It was shocking and disturbing to the point of tears. Maybe those two people could be sisters, but they definitely didn't look like the same person. Body dysmorphia is a mental disorder characterized by the obsessive belief that an aspect of one's own body is severely flawed. And if that flaw is real and not just perceived, the flaw is severely exaggerated in the dysmorphic person's mind. In either case, real or perceived, the obsessive thoughts about that flaw are prolific, intrusive, invasive, and they can occupy up to hours within a given day. Hours. That one's a bit of an understatement. This isn't something that you're born with. In my case, it certainly wasn't. And I didn't get here on my own. I had help, but it was from birth. My father grew up in a household where physical appearance was so heavily scrutinized, he all but hated his mother for how she would berate him and his sister for how they looked. Both my father and my aunt had plastic surgery in their adult years, the same kind, at the urging of my grandmother. The remnants of a life spent feeling like you would never look good enough, I imagine. My dad had an absolute codependent obsession with all things food and weight. He abhorred everything fat. Fat on people, fat in foods. Sugar was the man's arch nemesis, and he had no filter on how he felt about any of these things. He was incredibly cruel often about any kind of weight gain with my mother. So much so to the extent that the verbal and emotional abuse he would heap on her was the reason she eventually divorced him. Which was the right thing to do. Except as the only child, this meant I became the sole target. It was so much so to the extent that as a baby, he actually tried to convince my mom to stop breastfeeding me because he was convinced the baby fat I was getting would never go away and I would be stuck like that. The rabbit hole ran deep with that one. When I was a small child, he would rip food out of my hands, insisting that all the sugar was going to make me fat. Or the more accusatory, I didn't need any more. I would walk in the door and he would immediately announce that I had gained 2 pounds on my right hip. was likely the precursor to this day, me still seeing my right side as slightly bigger than my left side. Food was strictly controlled in the house, and constant scrutiny about my weight was just something I grew to accept. How nice or patient my father was with me was entirely dependent on how much I weighed. I don't think avoidance of an eating disorder was something that could have happened without an award of a congressional medal of some kind, really, under those circumstances. The real negative self-talk for me happened around age 8, as I recall. By the time I was in junior high, I had the fat and calorie content of every snack food memorized verbatim, so I knew exactly how much I needed to burn off during soccer games and throughout the day. I was weighing myself 5 or 6 times a day compulsively and engaging in food restriction. I only avoided life-threatening full-blown anorexia because of intervention from 2 of my soccer coaches. I at least recognized the importance of eating balanced with the importance of being able to stay an athlete. Still, my dad would rip the food out of my hands after soccer games. It didn't matter how thin I was. There was still too much sugar in it. By my late teen years, I had begun to get a sense that my father's issues didn't need to be my issues, but the damage had been done. I had been hardwired to equate physical appearance with love, with worthiness, with acceptance. In order to be wanted, you had to be somewhat attractive, but most importantly, you had to be thin. Not only was this something that was reinforced every time I would walk in my own door, but every time I turned on the television, every time I picked up a magazine, every time I saw a movie, hell, just existing in the world as a young girl, especially in the 80s and the 90s, well before there was any kind of semblance of a body positivity movement, that message was inescapable. Anybody remember, like, Kate Moss and the whole heroin chic thing in the early 90s? Yeah? Seriously. Fuck you, Calvin Klein. So bad. And the mirror became my warden, the constant oppressor of the prison I allowed myself to be put into. This was also around the time I threw myself full throttle into the world of dance. Because let's take some kerosene and douse that body in its fire. I had grown up in theater initially, and as a small child, even objectively, being somewhat of an ugly duckling, I had been told by casting directors and agents that my looks would hold me back the rest of my life. So, hey, I thought, let's go to dance. Because you didn't have to be pretty to be a dancer. You just had to be thin. And that was a noble pursuit to work towards. This gave me more time to be with my oppressor. More self-denigration. More abuse. I remember coming home and telling my dad that I was slowly switching over to dance. He just laughed. I mean, clearly, I didn't have the body type for it. But dance I did. And dance I threw myself into. Until a major injury in college at the university when I blew out my hip. And I did put on quite a bit of weight afterwards. And I caught hell. I could only wear spandex at the time because everything else was just so uncomfortable. I remember going out and visiting him shortly after the injury, and he was so agitated for days, and I just couldn't figure out why. Until finally one day, in the middle of a crowded department store, he just snapped and lost it. And he just said, "I need to buy you pants." I'm like, Dad, I have pants. It's like, well, you can't wear those. I'm like, Dad, this is all I can wear right now. Jeans are horribly uncomfortable. I just blew out my hips. This is it. He said, well, you can't wear those. You're too heavy for those. I can't stand looking at you. That one stung. A few months later, I had asked him for help buying a laptop for school. He refused, but he did offer to pay for my liposuction. Besides, he said, I was never going to be able to find a boyfriend being as heavy as I was. I would roll my eyes at these things. I knew this was bullshit for anybody else, but a part of me actually believed that this was my reality. I mean, besides, this is what I had been conditioned to believe my entire life, that my sense of value was directly tied to what size clothes I could wear. God damn it. Even after I lost the weight, this is what I believed. Y'all, I survived a tumor under my brain. Yeah, I beat medical odds that one thought should be impossible and lived to tell the tale. As a teacher, I have walked into classrooms and had kids look at me and say, "You're back. Now I know I'm going to be able to graduate." As a social worker, I have been the only voice in a courtroom full of people that have gotten judges to change their opinion and have them not send my kids of color to prison. And the communities that I helped build, none of those things. None of them made a damn bit of difference about how I felt about myself and my worth, because sitting in the back of my closet is a bag of clothes that I can't fit into and a pair of pants that I can't zip up. So I am a failure. I am worthless because of this. Damn it. What was done to me? What do we do to women in this society? Better question. What was I doing to myself? These are the things I would actually say to myself in the mirror. God, you're disgusting. Look at you. How could you let this happen? Your legs don't even look human. I mean, let's face it. Nobody's ever going to want to wake up next to you every day and have to look at this. And then the softer, more progressive, just build a life, a good life for yourself on your own. Because chances are, that's how it's going to be. And then I realized it one day. I had become my own abuser. Because that's what it is when we say these things to ourselves. And I guarantee you that many of the women sitting here tonight, and even some of the men, have had these exact same conversations with themselves. And make no mistake, it's abuse. I mean, yeah, some of these things were said to me over the years. But here's the thing. My dad wasn't a total monster. Not by a long shot. He did a lot of things right. But this one thing, he got so unbelievably wrong. Relationships are complicated, be they familial, friendship, romantic. My dad was my person. He was my best friend, one of them. And there was that part of him that was abusive. In fact, hearing the cancer diagnosis and watching him have to die slowly and eulogizing him was one of the hardest things I ever had to do. I think sometimes we have to remember that our parents are also recovering from their own childhoods. In my family, this specific kind of abuse was prolific. It was generational. And it was going to stop with me. Because this specific thing is a house of cards that has to come crashing down as a whole. This obsession with women being thin is a form of social control designed over the years to keep women subservient, complicit, and easily manipulated. The sense of worthlessness that comes with this obsession has kept so many women trapped in different cycles of violence throughout time. And God forbid, we all wake up one day and say, you know what? I'm fine just the way I am. Because so much money would be lost from health and fitness industries that are designed to make us feel less than. And the patriarchy would lose quite the stranglehold. So we have been conditioned to be our own oppressors. But we need to wake up. We need to be able to say, my accomplishments outweigh the numbers on the scale. My identity has nothing to do with what I look like in a goddamn bikini. You know, kind of like how men get to exist. We all need to collectively say, a woman's social capital is not directly tied to physical appearance. I finally woke up to this because I was tired. I was so tired of the obsessive thoughts taking up so much rental real estate. I was tired of money being spent on diet pills and supplements and the crash dieting. I was tired of only ever ordering a goddamn salad when I went out to eat. Oh, God, there's a whole other menu. Who knew? I was tired of buying into a system I knew was destructive. But most of all, I was tired of being my own worst enemy. When I was little, I always wanted a dad that was a little bit more handy, where I could learn how to build things from. I didn't realize it at the time, but we built a grand project together. We built my prison, the compound that I had been captive in for 38 years. And I have spent the past 5 raising that motherfucker to the ground. Roman style on this one. Not only am I tearing it down, I'm salting the earth so nothing can ever grow there again. How did I begin demolition? I stopped the constant attacks on myself. The barrage of hateful rhetoric I would hurl at myself in the mirror on a daily basis are things I would not say to somebody I actively disliked. So I made a new rule. Said, you are not allowed to say anything to yourself that you would not say to one of your best friends. And anytime I would go to the mirror and start in, I would stop myself and say, hey, would you say this to Sarah? Or Amber? Or Amanda? Oh God, no. Not in a million years. Then you are not saying it to yourself. And you are only allowed to talk to yourself the way you would speak to them. And wouldn't you know, over time, the mirror started to lose the hold it once had on me. The obsessive thoughts began to dissipate. The image started to change. And that's how I began the 5-year journey in leaving the worst of my father and the family behind, learning how to become my own best friend, and healing a lifetime of being my own abuser. I challenge everybody to engage in this process. It's incredible what you discover in just learning to be kind to yourself. So now, when my aunt, his sister, asks me, "So Mel, how much do you weigh these days?" And she will. I tell her, "I don't know. And I don't fucking care anymore." I look fine. I'm healthy. And really, nobody should give a damn. It's sad to know that she'll never be free. I still have some work to do. The image, I don't think, still 100% aligns, but I think I'm the closest that I've ever been. I still feel those familiar feelings of panic anytime I do gain a little weight. There's still some work to be done. I turn 40 next year. And fabulous! Every year on my birthday, I always give a present to myself. In 2019, that present is going to be taking the final steps across the ash heap of the prison that was erected so long ago. To look in the mirror and finally perhaps see what the rest of the world sees. But also to know it doesn't matter. I am more than what is reflected back. Freedom from the image. That is going to be the best birthday present ever. Thank you.